Cinemoddities, late night movies with Rob, Ben, and Zach. This is a podcast about cinematic oddities where we discuss any media that is too bizarre, abnormal, or off-kilter for contemporary audiences. Occasionally these projects gel, most times they crash hard into the realm of obscurity. Join us as we delve into the cult classic swamp. I'm Ben.
And I consider you all my heroes. An interesting line from this movie, I have to say, but one I wanted to go with because I consider you all my heroes, all my death racers, and you're one of my death racers, right, Ben?
Sure. Who says that? Who delivers that line?
That's from the warden when they're like
Hennessy?
Yeah, from Hennessy. When
Okay.
I think it's like right before they're going into like maybe the third race, but it's some moment where she's addressing like the entire prison. And she's like, you know, Death Race is a national event, and we all love it, and, like, America loves it, so thank you for being here. I consider you all my heroes. Now go die.
Yeah, I think that's right before stage 3. It has to, when she addresses the prison like that.
Yeah. Very, very strange scene.
Yeah. So Death Race. We're talking Death Race.
Yeah, the race of the dead or to the dead? Like, how does this go down?
I think it's the race to death. It's... You're trying to get old faster than everyone else, right?
Ooh, okay, yeah. Let's do it. What are we going to do? Like, do a lot of standing in the sun, something like that, right?
Right, yeah, exactly. Maybe it's we know where the Grim Reaper is, but we have trouble getting to him, and you just have to get there quickly. The race to death.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
I'm not sure. Maybe if we watch the movie, it'll illuminate what Death Race is actually.
I think we need to watch all 6 movies in the Death Race franchise to fully understand what Death Race is.
Do an in-depth psychological analysis of the Death Races.
Yes. And so now you might be wondering, the cinema audience and Ben, you know, I said there are 6 movies in the Death Race franchise.
That's a lot.
Astute listeners will also know that we've covered previously one of them, the original, Death Race 2000. And you might be wondering, well, this kind of makes some sense. They're doing Death Race, covering Death Race, because Jason Statham's in it. Well, yes, you are correct if you think that, but also we are going to cover some movies that are remakes of movies we've covered in the past. And we're going to kick off with Death Race because of Jason Statham, right? That, like, we're trying to connect them together, you know?
Yeah, that's right. We're doing a little bit of intertwining.
Yes, and there is a part of me after watching this movie, I'm very glad that I finally did, to see Statham in this because of who the director is working with Statham. And so basically what I want to say is I haven't seen this before. I've only seen the original, Death Race 2000, which of course, you know, I'll make some comparisons to as we go through, because I'm assuming Ben has not seen that movie from way back when. But I'm pretty sure, Ben, when we covered Crank, we talked a little bit about Death Race, and that you had seen it before. Is that right? Am I remembering correctly?
Oh, yeah. I saw Death Race in theaters way back when. If it was Jason Statham and it came out in theaters while I was in high school, I watched it. Let's see, when did Death Race actually come out?
It was 2008. I think August.
Okay,
yeah.
I was in high school. That fits. I saw it in theaters. I'm sure I watched it more than once, but I'm sure I haven't watched it in years.
Okay.
Now. So, I expect the last time I saw this movie was maybe as late as 2010, but it really could have been 2009. Like,
sure. So if you remember, what were your thoughts coming out of the theater when you saw this movie? Were you like jacked up about it?
I think my thoughts coming out were that it was, I was a teenage white high school kid with aggression problems, so I was definitely like ready to do coke when I came out of this. No, I think that, you know, I probably came out thinking it was like a little over the top or a little crazy, but that all in all it was good and ridiculous fun. Let me put it that way.
It certainly is ridiculous. I want to highlight there's a scene where the woman navigator to Jason Statham is hanging out of the window, the passenger side window of the car, while the car's, of course, going a bajillion miles an hour and getting shot at by everything. And she's just banging a Gatling gun with a wrench for a while. Like, that's just a little set piece in this movie. She's trying to unjam it or whatever. And I'm like, this is ridiculous.
That's not the time that she goes through the sunroof, is it?
No, I don't think so.
And God, I remember when she's sticking out of the sunroof, I'm like, you should get back in the car. Like, they are still shooting.
Yes, exactly.
Like, there was a reason to do what you did. I don't even remember what it was, but you should get back in the car.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah. This whole movie is, a bunch of nonsense, I would say.
No, this is you should wear your seatbelts. The movie, right?
Definitely. This is a long PSA about wearing your seatbelts. It's Death Race, the remake, 2008, directed and written by Paul W.S. Anderson, which I want to get into because, like, I have never seen this movie before. I'm glad that you dug it, Ben, when you saw it back in theaters, like you said, just, jacked up, ready to get revenge on whoever framed you for murdering your wife when you were in high school.
Yeah, I was
famously
Roger Rabbit.
had that happen to him.
And we had to figure out who framed me, and it was a Russian.
Damn Ruskies.
Ruskies.
So now that you've seen it, and like you said, watched it after many years, especially when, since we've gone through a lot of other Statham movies, I think this one is kind of forgotten in his filmography. I think this movie's really forgotten in general. It's just kind of, there as a title that might intrigue you now. But what do you think after watching it for this recording? Does it still hold up? Are you still ready to do coke after watching it?
This might surprise you. I am more positive on this movie than I expected to be.
Okay.
I actually, coming out of it, these days I watch movies, and a big part of my judgment is consistency in the plot and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the consistency or the decision making of the characters. Like if their decisions don't make sense, it'll kill a movie for me. This movie has only one significant thing where I'm like, that decision doesn't make sense.
Okay.
But beyond that, it's a decent action movie. They didn't go as over the top as they could have. They were pretty grounded for what it is. I mean, let's not get it wrong. It's cars driving around shooting each other. It's Twisted Metal.
Yes.
Twisted Metal, the movie.
Yeah. Oh my God, that is such a good way to put it. Because I did not write that in my notes, but I wrote video gamey, especially with the fucking pressure plate power-ups that they introduce at a certain point. And I'm like, oh my God, Twisted Metal is a great way to think about it. I'm surprised nobody hit a boost or something,
Yeah, that the NOS wasn't locked behind
exactly
a portal thing as well. But no, so I definitely I watched it. My wife actually watched it too, and we walked away and we're like, that movie was not nearly as bad. It was better than it had any right to be. It was not nearly as bad as it should have been based on what it is. And overall, I actually like it. It's a decent movie.
Okay. It's an interesting way. I kind of figured this would happen, but you definitely talking about these characters and the decisions they make. I definitely want to hear which one you said, made no sense. But I feel like I couldn't even latch on to the decisions of the characters in this movie because I got so hung up on the decisions of the filmmaker. And I think this is an incredibly, I don't want to say poorly put together, because it is Paul W.S. Anderson can put together a movie, but I found this whole movie very flashy, but with no substance. Very much like eating a bag of potato chips or something, it felt good in the moment, but as I thought about it more, I'd be like, oh, why'd I eat so many?
That's pretty fair. I would say that's not too different from my experience with it. And I should maybe clarify that as a potato chip movie, I didn't feel like the potato chips didn't make sense.
Okay.
I just felt like they were potato chips. It wasn't like, I don't know, what's a flavor you don't want on potato chips, like anchovy potato chips or something.
Sure.
It was like good old regular potato chips mixed with a little bit of bullets.
Yeah, exactly. With the way this movie is kind of put together, I think from not really the dialogue or the script, more of just the settings and stuff. I'll explain what I mean. This movie to me is it's a bag of potato chips, and you're eating the potato chips, and then just for seemingly no reason, you'll just keep reaching into this same bag and start pulling out pretzels, and you'll be like, oh, this is weird. I thought I was eating potato chips. And then it'll go back to potato chips. So the thing I mean by that is I think this movie is just conveniently forgets that they're in prison when it needs to. There's so much stuff that happens in this movie, and I'm like, how are they doing this? How are they walking around free in a garage with a bunch of shop tools? Like, is this a prison or not? And the movie very much just says, okay, if we need them to be in a prison, we're going to make sure those guards are present, or you're going to see the impacts of them being in prison. But other times, it's just like their crews are roaming around talking to each other and planning shit. And I'm like, where are the guards?
I can see where you're coming from, but I disagree a little bit, because I do think that there is a guard presence in the garage, especially when Jason as Frankenstein tries to walk away from his car and go talk to Pinchenko.
Sure, that's one example. Yeah.
But I definitely get that, like, there are other times where it seems like the guards aren't doing enough to keep them in their stations or whatever. So I don't know. I chalk that up to them having like more free roam in that area, and I just kind of imagined it as being like a secluded, cut off part of the prison, where even if they did figure something out or use their tools to the detriment of the prison, that they would be like so far removed from everything else that it wouldn't matter. And also, I assumed that the guards were like on the outer perimeter, because there was a lot of, I think there were some establishing shots of like guard towers around the outer perimeter of like the courtyards and shit. I just kind of imagined it was a similar setup.
Okay. I know where you're coming from. It just came across very much to me as like they were doing stuff, and I'm like, what? This is made so the plot can continue, you know? And I very much was like, they just seem to be like, the prison is the setting, you know? I didn't feel the full impact of the prison.
No, I mean, really, aside from the introduction scene, we don't get a typical prison experience. We get the experience of them in a garage.
Yeah.
The only way the prison is relevant is that that's what pushes them to do the race.
Yes.
And I think that for what this movie is and is trying to be, I feel like that's fine. But I don't know, maybe I'm being too generous.
Sure. No, I understand. Another thing on that level of, you know, I couldn't get past in some of the filmmaking, this is a lot of action. This is a lot of car chases and cars shooting at each other and like shit like that. You know, there's very minimal talking scenes. This is a very much an action. Yeah, drop the tombstone. Action scenes. There's a whole bunch of them. These action scenes, I find just to get so mindless after a while. Like, not really so much as I don't really like. I'm not saying they're like spatially, you know, or like difficultly spatially oriented where I don't know where anything is. I'm like, I get that they're driving. There's some track that they're following, you know? Mm-hmm. But there's just so much of just them, you know, chasing each other, shooting at each other, cut to them in their car, like Tyrese making a face or something like that, or cursing.
Yeah, it's Tyrese Gibson, right?
Yeah.
I think he was in Too Fast, Too Furious.
Yes, I believe so.
But I like to pretend that his last name is Gibbons.
Okay. Any reason?
Because it's like a little bird, you know? He just seems so angry, and then being like, he's actually just a little bird. Like, I don't know.
Right on,
you know,
right on.
It's one of the things about my brain.
Okay, so...
that I see doctors for. Oh, no, Gibbons are monkeys. My bad.
Tyrese Little Bird? Is that what we're calling him?
Sure.
Okay. So I find them, they just get so like mundane to me, and I'm just like so like turned off about them. I realized kind of 2/3 of the way through the movie, I felt that the thing I was missing was that this whole time we're just hearing, like, characters are telling us, and text on the screen is telling us that the death race is like this massive broadcasted event, like 70 million people are watching it and stuff like that.
Right.
But we only hear about that. We never see it. And I think this movie's missing like cuts to like
people in bars watching the race.
Like throughout the whole movie, once I realized this, I was kind of like, oh, these action scenes should be intercut with like some... it doesn't need to be like a subplot or a B plot. It could just be like for goofy one-off jokes.
Just establishing shots.
Shots. And then you could like, you know, like you said, like people at a bar, or, you know, like something happens and someone cuts someone off in race 1 and it like cuts to people cheering. But then once you've established that it's like you're showing how big this event is, you can start doing like these weird little sight gags. Like, you know, maybe in the second race or third race, you cut to like a bunch of 90-year-old people in like a retirement home, like all gathered watching death race. You
Sure.
like have like, you see like, you know, nurses in like a woman giving birth, and like the husband's watching death race while she's giving birth in like the hospital room. Like, I'm like, that's what this movie's missing. It needs something to show that this is on this grand scale, that all these people are watching it and maybe people are betting on it. But instead it's all this insular just car nonsense.
Did they? Do you remember if they did that in Hunger Games? Like, did they show shots of people like being really invested in this? I remember they did.
I don't remember for Hunger.
I'm not saying Hunger Games is like the template to follow or anything either. It's just another movie that has this as like a major plot point.
I feel like they did.
I'm also
I feel like
thinking
there were like cutbacks to the whatever village Jennifer Lawrence is from, like watching it or something like that. I feel like that happens. Yeah.
I'm also remembering a movie called, I think, The Condemned, where a bunch of prisoners like get put on an island and have to fight their way off. So it's like Hunger Games minus the big stakes, and it's just like small stakes Hunger Games, I guess. And I'm thinking that they maybe didn't do that or didn't do it much in that movie either. And the whole point of that movie was like, there are people that are watching this. And actually, no, come to think of it, Escape Room, that movie, the entire reason that those people are in the escape room is for viewing content, and they also don't do these shots. So it's maybe kind of a common thing to miss, even though I agree that it could have served the movie well.
Yeah, I think it would have, absolutely added a lot to what we were seeing. Like, there's some moment where Jason Statham like hits the nos or takes a shortcut or some shit and gets back in first place, and I think it cuts to the Hennessy, the warden, and Jason Clarke is the guard, and whoever else is in that control tower, and they're like, like, oh my God, like that, what a move that was. And I'm like, show people cheering for it. Like, give me some depth to this. Like, I'm just watching fools like being made to race and shoot at each other in prison. Like, I needed that. I wanted that depth from the audience.
Yeah, I mean that would have added something to the movie, a level of maybe integrity or it would have shown us the seriousness of the situation a little bit more. But we also have to look at this as like, we're in a time period where presumably like a lot of people are poor and getting laid off work, and that's a big problem. But they're still paying for pay-per-view death races.
Yes.
I expect it's like the only people that are watching this are probably the people that still have money, and they could have done something with that also.
Absolutely, yeah. And
where it's like, I don't know, at the end we could get like a Purge mashup where it's like, at the end of the race, there's fucking poor people trying to break into these people's houses and shit.
It rings of Idiocracy to me. That the way you put it when you said that, these people are poor, but they're still spending $250 to watch Death Race, and with how popular it is, it definitely makes me think of like, I guess that also goes in with when I thought they were going to start doing what I was hoping they were doing with like recognizing the broadcasting of this death race is the commercial for it, where it says like 100 for one night, 250 for all 3 nights or something like that.
Yeah.
Like that seems like a commercial straight out. It could be a commercial straight out of Idiocracy, and I was hoping they go further with that, but we only get to see that two or three times or something. And it's never as good as the first time. The first time it's like, oh, you have to pay for this. This is a huge event. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't even know if I remember it happening more than once. I definitely remember the first time they talked about it, where they're telling us, the price is, like you said, 100 for one night.
Or 250
for all 3.
That's a deal.
But that also, like, I find it so strange that all 3 nights happen back to back. It's like they say at one point like they have 14 hours to get the car in like ready for the next stage of the race.
Yeah,
like that is not enough time.
No, definitely
to undo the damage. I think they do have a new tombstone, so it's not like they have to like replace that.
Sure.
I think they're just swapping it. But anyway,
it's still got to be tough to get on. That thing's heavy.
Presumably, yeah. Well, they had. I mean, they had all kinds of equipment. They had lifts and shit. So.
The thing that we should remember when we're talking about the cost of Death Race, of watching Death Race, and you mentioning that, what we see of the outside world is that people are very poor and getting, laid off from their job. We do hear...
I think he gets $300.
That's what I was about to say. You do hear that at the start, Statham gets $300 for 120 hours worth of work.
Yeah, I remember when I was younger, like, he's like, I worked 120 hours over the last 3 weeks. I remember when I was younger, I was like, that's an amount of time. And now I'm like, that's regular full-time employment.
That is like, what? That's like nearly 3/4 of a week, I think, right? Isn't a week like 160-something hours?
Probably. But it's just the normal 40-hour work week in America.
Sure. But still, the thing we have to remember is that for 120 hours worth of work, he gets $300.
Right,
that's one whole Death Race subscription and $50 for fun. You know, like,
well, assuming that taxes don't eat up the rest of that, surely it's $280 with tax.
Sure. So I think in terms of using the metric of can the working man afford a full three race death race subscription, then the economy here is doing pretty okay. Because Jason Statham could definitely watch Death Race. You work 120 hours, you watch a Death Race, and repeat. That's what life is.
Yeah, surely, and you don't need to eat or anything.
That's why you got that $30.
His wife is
fun.
like, his wife is like, we're gonna make it last, or we'll make ends meet, or whatever the fuck she says, and I'm just like, fucking how? Like $300 is nothing. It doesn't that part definitely doesn't make sense. The external setting, and like again, unless it's just the rich people watching. But that didn't interfere with my like ability to enjoy the movie too much.
Okay. So I guess when we're talking about these scenes, I wanted to ask you, do you know which version of this movie you watched? Because apparently there is a theatrical and an unrated. Do you know which one you watched?
I imagine I watched the theatrical version. I rented it on something.
Hoopla.
Probably Amazon.
Hoopla Prime. There we go.
Yep.
Do you know how long the version you watched was?
Hour 40? Something like that?
Okay, yeah, I think that's the theatrical. Okay, so Hoopla has the theatrical. I watched the unrated, which is about an hour 51. I would imagine I was trying to look up what the differences are, and I couldn't really find a great description in like the little looking I did. I'm sure it's out there. But I would imagine just from watching this movie and this being the only time I watched it, there is some like really gratuitous like gore shots in the version I watched. I would imagine that that is not in the theatrical. Like I'm sure all the same deaths occur, but the unrated version probably showed a lot more. Did you have a scene in your movie where Tyrese is reciting like scripture and cutting his face with a razor blade?
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking for some reason that might be in the unrated only, but like I said, I don't know.
I mean, it's not like particularly long, but
it is 40 minutes in the unrated version.
The scene that I was thinking about, which, in terms of gruesome deaths, I think the most gruesome death that we see on screen is when that dude gets his head cut off by Tyrese's truck.
Yeah.
The grim. You can do A, you can do B, you can even do X, but you can't fucking kill me. That guy's saying as he gets.
Yes, I like that line because, like you said, he says those things, and then at the end he says, "And you can't play dance," and then he gets killed. You know?
I'm glad that we took it there.
Okay,
you can't play dance.
Sorry, I'll try again.
No, you won't. I don't want you trying again because you're not really trying. All you're doing is wasting my time. And I don't like people who waste my time. You got it?
But
No buts. You asked for my advice, my help, and then you didn't take it. You're a good dancer. A real good dancer. But you're not great yet. You got something blocking you from getting there. The way you're dancing right now, you wouldn't even place in the contest. I don't know what it is that's bothering you, but you need to get past it and stop wasting my time, okay? You can play baseball. You can play tennis. You can even play football. But you can't play dance. It's a shame, Ken. It's really a shame. Because you're a good dancer. You could be great. Really great. A real contender. But now I'm through. I'm finished.
When the death head trap is activated and like the spikes come out of the ground and the guy like goes through it, there is a shot of like his head, like him coughing up blood and stuff like that.
Oh, and then the car gets like pulled underground like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It might be some frames and stuff that are in the unrated one. Like I said, I'm pretty sure all the same deaths occur, but I couldn't. Like I said, I didn't look up what the other differences are. I can't imagine it's anything too crazy. Probably if we found the list of differences, it would be like, this version has 10 more minutes of cars shooting at each other.
They used 450 more rounds of ammo per second.
Yeah, exactly.
And the differences, I couldn't tell you. I didn't even know there was an unrated version.
Right on. Yeah, I found that one and I was like, okay, let's go for it.
I'm all about it.
So I guess then it also comes down to, like I mentioned earlier, I'm pretty sure you haven't seen it, but have you seen the original Death Race 2000?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
It's a negative for me, Ghost Rider.
So we covered that one way back when because it is a Paul Bartel movie. When we covered a bunch of Paul Bartel movies. It's a really more of a Roger Corman movie, which I know we discussed in that episode. Roger Corman's also a producer on this one, so I'm sure he still owns rights to this franchise to some extent.
For anyone that's confused, when he says we, he does not mean me. So I didn't watch it, but we covered it.
I mean you specifically, Ben. You were there.
Yeah, that's right.
We edited you in post, saying and like yawning. I put that in the background.
Nice.
The original movie's fairly interesting. It's not like fully fleshed out, but there is an interesting idea there. The differences between them is there's no prison thing in the original movie. It's a cross country, like across America, like from coast to coast race. Technically, because the contestants are trying to get to, from a point A to point B across the country. But as they do this cross-country drive, they have to kill people with their vehicles to get points. And so there's a scene where it's like, oh, if you kill somebody in like this age range, you get this many points, and like senior citizens are double points, and babies are double points, and like
you tell me this joke that I've been doing since I was in middle school is actually from a movie
probably
that existed before I was alive.
Yes, I think the original Death Race was the 70s. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been like 15 points if you hit the jaywalker.
Sure.
Like that. Oh man, wow! I thought I was original. Nothing new under the sun, Rob. Nothing new under the sun.
I've destroyed Ben's entire comedic career. He was
That's right. Yeah, that was pretty much it.
All my confidence came from me thinking of that joke.
I mean, that was the only joke that I know of, made up. So
your stand-up, you had 15 minutes to do at open mic night, and you did that joke 5 times.
That's 3 minutes per. That's a lot.
You know what that makes me think of? Do you remember we saw some concert in Columbus, and there was some opening band? I'm never going to remember who it was, but they played a song, and then they were like, we're going to keep playing this song until it's your new favorite song. And they played it like 3 or 4 times in a row. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
It was one of those places in Columbus where we were up at like the not the floor. We were like up at the balcony or whatever. I remember standing.
Was it when we saw
there.
the Kooks?
No, because I think that was the one you were sick for.
Yeah,
I think this was one that we like. Nick was there or something like that for some reason.
The only ones I went to with Nick, we were standing down in the pit.
Okay.
So I might not have been there.
But I feel like you were, though, because I feel like you thinking you were like I feel like I remember you saying something like I appreciate their dedication or something like that. Because they were just like, now you have to cheer harder and you have to know the words, and the singer was like, we're gonna play it again, and it was an interesting take on an opening act for sure.
That is interesting. Have I discussed with you? We saw Vinyl Theater in Columbus once, right?
Yes, definitely. I have a signed CD from that time.
Did we see? Oh God, I'm gonna look it up and I'm gonna ask you later about another band, Joywave. Did we see Joywave?
I don't think so, because I don't think I've ever seen Joywave.
Okay, that was. I think maybe I mixed their performances in my mind.
Okay,
or rather, I was thinking that Vinyl Theater was Joywave, and later I was like, I think I've seen this band, and I wasn't sure. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
I think it's there, Ben. Don't shortchange yourself. It's there.
Okay. All right.
So this original, there's the points and stuff, like you said, and we went down that tangent. So Ben, you stole a joke from a movie that existed.
I had never seen.
You're canceled. Okay, it doesn't matter if you've seen it or not. You stole it. You're canceled. Okay, you're a joke stealer. You're done. You're out of here.
You're done.
You're fired. So. The gist, like the propulsion of the plot of the original is like, while this race is going on, there is this Frankenstein character who is like the one is like the favorite, very similar, to in this movie. But Frankenstein is played by David Carradine, who has this plan that he wants to win this race so that at the ending ceremony he's gonna like assassinate the president, type of thing. Because they're not going to see it coming from him and end the death race. There's like a whole subplot about like this, like, air quotes, terrorist group. They're really like the good guys in the movie, but they are terrorists. They're like infiltrating or like sabotaging the death race, trying to like kill the participants, like the actual racers and stuff like that.
Okay.
Since like killing people gets points, the interesting thing in the movie is it brings up this notion of like there's one night where it's like because they all stop, like all the racers have dinner together that's like the talking scenes, and they're not in the cars and stuff like that. They all like stop in like the same hotel and stuff like that, basically, because it's cross country, so it takes days. But there's this notion that like Frankenstein's fan club, like this young girl like confronts him like in the hallway of one of these hotels, and she's like, I'm like one of your biggest fans, like we love watching you in Death Race, and like I'm part of this group that is like Frankenstein fanatics, and we've decided that we wanted to like sacrifice somebody for you to kill with your car so you can get more points, and I'm that sacrifice, and I wanted to meet you before like you did it. And you know, David Carradine's Frankenstein is like, don't kill yourself over this, like we're trying to end this, like, you know. And there is this interesting idea of like the showing the audience of the Death Race and like the cultural, you know, inebriation that it's caused. Like people have like, you know, bought into it, Stockholm syndrome almost, that Death Race is good and like this death is a good thing, you know, versus like trying to take it down and like how bad it is. There are some interesting ideas, and that's what I think this movie, the remake 2008 with Statham, could have gone for if they included some of those, you know, audience moments, and that would have been a channel to give some, you know, maybe satirical elements, or at least, you know, some more engaging elements than just constant action.
Yeah. So I think we need to acknowledge that you're tainted by the original.
Sure. Sure.
but
I'm
no, it would
impure.
have
Ben's calling
been
me impure.
it would have been like maybe a more like socially prudent movie if that had happened, where they could have actually been making comments about society or like the degradation thereof or something. But this very clearly was intended to be action time fun movie.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So given that that's not what they were going for, I'm not surprised, I guess, to see the absence of that.
Yeah. And I also, when I sat down to watch this and it began, and you know, there's the opening credits and it starts to, you know, list that Paul W.S. Anderson is a producer, and then I see that it's, you know, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. I was like, okay, I know what I'm getting into. Everything I've said so far of like this audience, showing off the audience and how big this broadcasted event is, I definitely would have liked that. I think that would have made this a objectively better movie. Mm-hmm. But I am with you where it's like, Ben, this is not what they were going for. You are absolutely right. They are going for an action, what'd you say, good time fun type of movie, and that is right. And that's where it comes back to what I was saying about it's flashy, but it's not substantive. Like this is very of a vacuous, like shallow movie, and I would say that's what Paul W.S. Anderson does a lot of. He's known for things like all the Resident Evil movies, Event Horizon. Did you ever see that movie about like cosmic horror in space, like about a black hole and stuff like that?
Oh no, is it any good?
It's a Paul W.S. Anderson movie, so it's not great, but there's some interesting stuff in it. His first movie, actually, maybe not first, but one of his earlier movies is 1995's Mortal Kombat, and that is definitely a, you know, just action, like, good time movie, of trying to be an action, good time, fun movie, for sure.
Yeah. I've actually rewatched some of those early Mortal Kombat movies kind of recently. They're not great.
No, that's the same guy. Have you seen the Resident Evil movies? I've only ever seen the first one, and I think there's like 6 or something now.
I think I did watch that one, the first one. I vaguely remember it being like all jump scares and really no substance. Okay.
Yeah, I remember it being a lot of action as well.
Okay.
Like Mila Jovovich flipping over and shooting things, you know, shooting zombie dogs or whatever. I remember that from like the trailers and stuff. Okay. And then most recently, Paul W.S. Anderson did Monster Hunter, which I haven't seen. That was from what I think maybe 2 years ago or something. He definitely makes. He's a prolific director. He makes these movies that are just like, you know, action kind of. Just I want to kind of say schlock, you know, and I think he's definitely more towards the giving you these flashy action-based things, or there's some gimmick, you know, like Resident Evil has the zombies, Event Horizon, Mortal Kombat has the fighters with their powers, Event Horizon has like space and black holes, and there's like a Hellraiser kind of twist to that movie as well. It's very much just, you know, showing things off. And I think it goes back to what I was saying also about how they just like conveniently aren't in prison for some scenes. I think his movies definitely take on a lot of that. Like if the movie needs to accomplish something, if like his movie needs to have something happen, he's going to make sure it damn well happens, you know?
Okay.
Like setting or context be damned. Another example from Death Race that I think of is it's near the very end of the movie when Tyrese's navigator, I think the third one we see, gets shot, like in their big final breakout part of the race.
Yeah, and then Tyrese is like checking himself for bullet holes.
Yeah, Tyrese is checking himself for bullets, but like this other navigator gets like shot a good amount of times. Where do those bullets come from? How did those bullets shoot him through the chest like that?
Oh, definitely that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, because the only people with guns nearby are up in the towers.
And we've also been watching Tyrese's vehicle get shot to shit from every angle, and there's bulletproof glass, bulletproof like armor and stuff like that. But yet somehow a wide spread of bullets gets to find a weak point or weak points in this car to go through the navigator's chest.
They do specify or say at some point that the guards have more gunpowder or bigger gunpowder than they do. So it arguably could be that they have something like armor piercing rounds that could pierce the armor of these cars. I mean, I'm giving the movie maybe a little more benefit of the doubt than you would or should, but they do specifically mention that the guards have access to like more firepower than they do.
I think you are outing yourself as the world's biggest Paul W.S. Anderson defender.
If that's true, I feel bad for the guy.
I use that as an example of I watched that scene and I was like, where the fuck did those bullets come from? It doesn't matter. That navigator needed to get shot. We needed to have that, squib effect of the blood spurting out, and we need Tyrese to check himself for bullets. We just need it to happen, goddammit.
Well, we need the whole Pulp Fiction thing where there's like look behind him and there's bullet holes in the walls. Like that was essentially what Tyrese did. He's just like
yeah.
Like that was divine intervention.
But yeah, I definitely think, it's all Paul W.S. Anderson is trying to like show off this stuff. And there's nothing really wrong with that. And this is where I also, while I didn't particularly like this movie for a lot of the things I've been talking about and more I'll explain, you can't, I'm definitely kind of taking what you said when we talked about Revolver, where you had your issues with Revolver, but at the same time you were like, but this movie is not bad. Like, this movie, Death Race, is also very well put together. Like, it is a flashy movie, but, like, it's like, the action is filmed pretty well. I mean, it's shaky and stuff, but you're in cars and things like that. Like, there's certain action sequences that are real fun, like Jason Statham driving backwards to shoot with the machine gun. That's fun. That's fine.
Yeah.
But like, there's a lot of stuff of like Jason Statham when he goes to prison, like the whole like workers fighting the riot police in the very like first 5 minutes of the movie.
Oh yeah.
A lot of like the establishing shots of like before race day or like nighttime shots and stuff. It is a very well directed movie in the sense that it's flashy. I think it's vacuous. I don't think it's Paul W.S. Anderson has some great theme he's going for with this movie, but at least he's showing it off in a cool way. I can't deny that.
I mean, just the entire like prison industrial complex. Like this movie does say that all prisons have become for-profit prisons, and essentially that the capitalist system is broken down.
Yes.
So whether or not you want to say that he's like has a grandiose theme, like he did at least put this in a setting where you could discuss some grandiose things.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
He and like by not addressing them, he's normalizing them, which again might be giving him too much credit, but it's like he's normalizing a very unnormal situation, and that in itself says something.
That's fair. That's a good point. Yeah, I definitely think since of course you're the head of the Paul W.S. Anderson fan club, as we're realizing in this episode.
Yeah, I actually created the Facebook group.
I definitely think that Paul W.S. Anderson is more of like, oh, here's this idea. Where do we put it? I don't know, dystopia, future, prison, capitalism, bad. Like almost like put together like a Family Guy joke type of thing.
Well, and that very well might be the case. He might have ad-libbed the setting. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, we don't know. That Ben is still waiting to get him for an interview for the fan club, so
that's right.
You can ask him that. I do want to. Speaking of that, maybe this sheds some light on on that idea of how he picked this. Apparently, from what I've read, early drafts of this script. Some of them were before he came on. Some of them were after. But earlier drafts involved much in the same vein as the original that I described, but not a like across America race, but an around the world race. But instead of just like, cars with machine guns and rockets, which are basically in, both movies, there's no real, high-tech stuff. This would be like future technology. Like they mentioned, invisible cars and shit like that in some of the things I read. That seemingly got tossed for this prison idea, and, Jason Statham has to race. From what I could find, budgetary concerns. Apparently doing all this fancy stuff in around the world race, they didn't have the money for, so they put it in this grimy prison where all the cars are, muted in color, and probably save them a good bit of money.
That's interesting. Like in terms of this being a remake, it sounds like, they wanted to remake it futuristically.
Yeah.
But then they were just like fucked by the budget.
Yeah.
At least in that sense, like when you look at it, you're not just like, well, they were completely not true to the source material. I don't know why they would ever call this a remake, because that is what comes to mind when you mention what the first movie actually is.
Yeah. It definitely is more of a reimagining, that type of thing, right. A modernization.
Well, and I guess in part that's why I bring up the fact that there could be some politics or something deeper there. It's like for this to be a reimagining of the original idea. But the reimagining is that it takes place in this like dystopian capitalist world. Mm-hmm. It's like that could have been trying to say something. It could have been trying to say something and knowing that this audience wasn't the audience for the message, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So
the dystopian capitalist world of the far off year 2012.
Oh my God, is that when it takes place?
Yeah. In the opening text, it says like 2012. The economy has collapsed.
Oh, so they're going 4 years out.
A whole 4.
Wow. Okay. I mean, I would have expected at least like 2050.
Yeah. So the original had 20 plus years, and then the sequel to the original is Death Race 2050, which I think came out in like the 90s or something. So that had 50 plus years. Paul W.S. Anderson's like, I don't know, what's the future? 4 years from now? I don't even know what I'm going to do tomorrow,
That's a good point. I also don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow.
That's your fast facts about Paul W.S. Anderson on the website, the blog spot you made. He doesn't know what he's doing tomorrow.
Yeah, I know parts of it, but I don't know the whole thing.
That would be an interesting thing to put on a resume to see if people are actually reading your resume. in a small bulleted list of like skills or proficiencies, be like lack of knowledge on tomorrow's activities or something like that.
So, I mean, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I don't even know where I see myself tomorrow.
Right on.
That's great. I want to start interviewing for jobs again just so I can do that to somebody.
I think you can just interview for jobs anytime you want, right?
Sure, I can. Yeah, they have to agree to see me, but yeah.
Could you imagine the company you're working for, they find out that you're currently working for, like somebody's working for a company, and they find out that the employee's going to other job interviews, and they might be like, oh, is he infringing on like the non-compete clause or something, or whatever contracts he signed? And you have to explain to your company to be like, I'm just doing it to like troll people who read resumes. I'm not actually looking for a job. Maybe like that's an interesting use of your time, and I don't know if we can do anything about that.
I'm sure my boss would think it was funny. He might ask me to stop. I don't know, but he might just think it was funny. I don't know. That's a weird thing to do.
So I think there's a few more filmmaking things I'm sure we'll get into, but I think this movie has is definitely a Paul W.S. Anderson movie. It doesn't do anything of the interesting things I wish it did. But now I am interested in what you have to say, Ben, about this decision-making of the characters. Because like I said, I really want to hear what you have to say, because I couldn't even latch on to this. I wasn't even able to analyze this on that story level because I was so baffled by some of the filmmaking stuff. But maybe, I don't know, what like gave you this notion of that the decision-making was good? And there was one you said, a moment you said that you didn't like or something. But please expand on this, because this story just kind of glazed me over. Oh, like a big old donut. There we go. I almost forgot that one.
Well, I guess maybe to be more accurate, I should say that the only glaring hole I found was one.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
There's not. I wouldn't say that there's like a ton of decision making that is made in the film, but the thing that really didn't make sense is in stage 2 when they release the death diesel.
Oh yeah.
Whenever they get down to 2 racers, there's no reason for the Death Diesel to continue to try to kill them.
But it's the boss, Ben. That's the boss level.
Yeah, but it's in stage 2.
It's the sub-boss level.
I'm just saying, without two racers for stage 3, I feel like they're going to lose some viewership.
I don't know. Don't you think Hennessy's goal was to use the Death Diesel to kill the both remaining racers, and then the third race would just be watching the Death Diesel do the race? Like it would go on, and then people would be like, "Death Diesel, Death Diesel."
Well, I did postulate is like maybe if it got down to 1, they would stop, and then the third round would be like, can they survive?
Oh.
And it would just be like the Death Diesel and other things trying to take them out constantly.
Exactly.
But like that was really the only thing where I was like, this, from Hennessy's perspective, this makes no sense.
Yeah, I agree, and I also very much saw it as a video game thing when that giant, huge fucking turreted tanks, flame throwing, all that shit, badass thing comes out. I'm like, okay, we're going through the motions. They have to fight this sub boss type of thing. It's just very much like. Oh, man. But another moment, just to bring it back to that, wouldn't have been so cool, like the Death Diesel comes out, cut to some random location, I don't know, like maybe like 6-year-olds in like preschool or something, and they're all cheering for the Death Diesel because their teacher's letting them watch Death Race or something,
That would have been interesting to see 6-year-olds cheering for the Death Diesel.
Yeah, exactly. One of the kids has an action figure of the Death Diesel, that'd be great.
But aside from that, I mainly meant like, the thing in scary movies where you're watching, and it's like that character, it doesn't make any sense for them to go back in the situation or whatever. Like there wasn't a ton of that. So I guess what I meant is that the movie didn't like make me uncomfortable with its bad decisions.
Gotcha.
It was just the one time I was like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make sense. And then, so it's like it becomes clear that they framed him to put him in the prison. One thing that's a little unclear about that is like the 6 months between when he got framed and when he gets to that prison. Like, why didn't they just get him straight there?
Yes. This is one of the questions I had for you, Ben. So is it? I think I'm correct in saying the movie confirms that Statham was framed by Hennessy so he could race for her, right? The movie very much is making us believe that, right?
I believe, that's the case.
But how is that really confirmed to us as the viewer? Because I was very much like, oh, this could be is it true or is it not true that it was all like, this is why he's in this prison and framed framed for his wife's murder.
Well,
then they just kind of like say, I'm like, oh, I guess I am supposed to believe that? I was confused.
So the only way that it's like, quote unquote, confirmed, it's not ever actually like explicitly confirmed, but he remembers that the person who framed him had the like GPS bracelet on.
Yeah.
And that the people that Hennessy let out of the prison for whatever reason.
Oh yeah, the work release people.
Yeah, the work release. That they also had those GPS signals on. And then I think at some point Panchenko actually says, like, I think he actually confirms.
He says
it was Hennessy.
Yeah, when Statham's choking him out, he says it's Hennessy, and Statham's like, I know.
Yeah.
And then also Pachenko does that finger gun thing that the killer did to him that night, which is very much like, contrived from a story point. But I always love that where it's like, this person did a very similar hand gesture to this other guy. It has to be him, I love that like trope in movies,
Sure. Well, there is something kind of fair to that. Not all that many people make the same gestures all the time, It's like when I'm sure you've known people that like pick up a gesture and they stick with it for a while.
Sure.
And like nobody else in your friend group does that gesture. So it's at least amongst your small friend group, it would be an identifying characteristic. So at that point, it's like there's this semi-identifying characteristic, and also the fact that it would be a ridiculous coincidence.
Sure, with the other layers of info, yeah. Right.
So it's like it's not like that one thing is enough, but no, I guess I'm with you a little bit.
It's enough for the movie. There's a great like absurd sketch comedy bit that we could do of like, someone in a car, maybe they're driving and they get cut off, and the person who cut them off like puts their hand out the window and like waves at them or something. And then later on, the person who got cut off like sees someone else, just like a totally different person, like just
in a
out in
different
public,
car?
maybe not even a different car, just out in public, like waving at another person, and they go into like this PTSD rage of like they both waved. It's the same person who cut me off, and then like goes and beats him up or something.
Even do a flashback of the waves being like pretty different.
Yes, exactly. Like, it has to be him. If it's enough for Jason Statham, it's enough for me. Another thing I wanted to mention, so in the positive thing for this movie, there was one moment that was a very well-crafted joke and a very good just kind of like total poking fun at Jason Statham moment. It's the "this guy can't grind for shit" moment.
Oh, sure.
I think there is something that maybe Paul W.S. Anderson is aware of this, or maybe he's not when he made this scene, but this scene is kind of genius, or that joke is genius. It's because it starts with, like, you know, maybe not slow-mo, but, like, camera is just lingering on Jason Statham, like, using heavy machinery, a grinder, as we realize. Like, sparks are flying, he's in his tank top or whatever, there's muscles, you know, he's ripped, he's Jason Statham, and we just see this establishing shot that's very much just, you know, the gaze at Jason Statham, like, look how buff this guy is, he's our hero. We know him, he's the mechanic, he can do anything. It's like that notion of when you see The Rock, you know, doing badass or lifting 1 billion pounds at the gym in a movie. You're like, oh, because he's a strong man. Like, it's visual storytelling and just, like, to the maximum. Jason Statham goes, like, and runs after some other guy that he has to talk to, whatever the fuck the plot needs to happen. And he only does that because one of the guys in his crew, I think Lists, the one with the stutter, says something like, oh, you know, you should go follow him or something like that. Jason Statham ends up leaving. The other guy from the crew comes up, and he says to Lists, as if it was like Lists' intention to get Jason Statham out of here, he goes, good idea, this guy can't grind for shit. And it is really funny because of that establishing shot, it's like, oh, look how cool Jason Statham is. Like, he's doing this manly, badass thing. And then to subvert it with, wow, he's really bad at this. It's such a neat idea. And that's something that I think when, you know, we talked a lot about comparing Statham to The Rock. The Rock takes himself so seriously. Like, I feel like The Rock in this day and age would not let that joke have. He'd be like, you can't make fun of me like that. Like, I'm The Rock. I am good at grinding, you know? And, like, Jason Statham's like, yeah, whatever, make this joke. It's funny. And I think it's a great meta commentary on, like, the action hero, where we get a notion that he's bad at something.
I didn't receive it that way, but that is, I didn't, what I should say is, like, I didn't spend as much time thinking about the establishing shot and not being like action man establishing shot.
Sure.
But no, that totally makes sense, and it's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's a great and like I said, I don't know if Paul W.S. Anderson intended for that or not, but that'll be when you interview him for the fan club. Another question you can ask him.
Sure.
I mentioned also, it is neat the moment when Statham's driving backwards to shoot at the car. It's kind of just like pretty obvious that they can, you know, if you're thinking of like cars shooting at each other and cool action scenes, what can we do? We'll make something go backwards. The thing that I dislike, though, is the dialogue leading up to that moment is pretty, like, ridiculous, because it's the whole thing where his navigator woman is like, there's a shield power-up or a sword power-up. That is basically what she says. And she's like, you should take the shield power-up, and Statham takes the other one. And they're like, the machine guns shoot forward. What's he gonna shoot at? And I'm like, well, he's gonna fucking go backwards. Like, are you all stupid? You know, like, that's the only option.
Well, okay, so they're looking at it from the standpoint of having done this race several times, and the fact that it makes sense to use defensive power-ups when you're ahead. So I get that, like, looking at it from the movie critic standpoint, you're like, of course it makes sense he's going to go backwards. But from their perspective, that doesn't make sense in the slightest.
Yes, you're absolutely right. But I
like, what would make sense from their perspective maybe is that he, like, juts off to the left real hard and, like, slams on his brakes and ends up right behind somebody. And you know, like, that, like, from the standpoint of, like, doing racing stuff.
Sure.
Maybe that makes more sense. But, like, him going backwards at those speeds, that doesn't make any sense.
He's Jason Statham, though. He can do it all except grind. But this is actually a great example of the way we're talking about it. Is you are absolutely right. In context, no problem. It makes no sense to them. I am more upset with the way the movie decides to have us, like, tell the audience, like, the dialogue, like, everybody talks about it. Like, the woman's like, you can't do this. And even Ian McShane is like, you're in first. Who are you going to shoot at? I feel like as soon as he gets it, we don't need anybody to talk about it. We understand as a viewer that this is going to happen. Maybe, just have the moment where Herbie, like, take the defensive thing, and he doesn't. Then the audience is smart enough to go, oh, we're going to get a backward scene. Or even when it happens, it's not going to be too surprising. Like, the dialogue might as well be, like, the woman goes, don't take forward thing. He goes, I take forward thing. But we need backward thing. I make forward thing a backward thing. And I'm like, stop talking about this. I understand it, movie. Economical storytelling.
I don't know. Like, I kind of disagree with you. Like, when he first takes the guns, like, I was thinking, like, he could shoot out a bridge in front of him and try to, like, make something collapse on people behind him. Like, in an action movie, that's not that far-fetched.
Sure.
So, like, I didn't think that it was, like, painstakingly obvious he was going to go backwards, because they could have done something else. That being said, in this movie, they were never going to do something else. And the fact that I didn't see it coming is, it is what it is. Like, I just didn't think about it from that perspective. But no, I definitely think that there could have been other options. And for them to establish, like, that was in part how they established that he was out in front also, if I remember right.
Okay.
Like, it was not clear, I think, from the scenes leading up to that he was that there was nobody in front of him.
Okay. That would be a good point. I don't remember that, but yeah, I know what you're saying. But Ben, if he did something else, he wouldn't have made the forward thing a backward thing, and that's what makes that scene cool.
I don't know. It's pretty cool to like destabilize a bridge and make it fall on somebody.
That's fair. I mean, they do blow open a hole in the racetrack to escape from later on.
Right. Yeah. So, like, it's not as if destabilizing parts of the racetrack is like,
totally out of the question. Yeah. Okay.
So, like, I definitely, when I'm watching this, I'm like, yes, him going backwards is an option that maybe seems like the most obvious, but, like, I don't know. Sometimes I get locked in this place where it's like, this thing is what it's for. It's for what it's for. And so then I start thinking about, like, ways you could use it that are maybe not what you would expect, but still using it the way that it's supposed to face. And, like, I don't know, maybe that's like something that I've developed from playing Magic a lot. It's like, this thing, like, this card does what it does, but how can I use that to make something else happen? And in the event that it's like an offensive card and I need something defensive, is there a way that I can do that? That I can manipulate that to be to be defensive, even though it's offensive in nature. And yeah, so I mean, I don't know. That's just like the way that I'm thinking about it. Is like, how can I manipulate these guns to shoot forward and be defensive?
Yeah.
Whereas, he obviously looks at it from a slightly more out of the box of how can I make these guns shoot backwards?
How do I make forward thing a backward thing? Yes, I think with that. With this last disagreement of ours, Ben, things have gotten pretty hostile. So let me say, okay, cocksucker, fuck with me, and we'll see who shits on the sidewalk. I'm pulling that one out now.
Oh man, so if
okay, cocksucker, fuck with me, and we'll see who shits on the sidewalk.
If I could remember it, the response I would give you would be from the line from Snatch, where he says something about. While you still have legs, but I can't remember the whole line. So
Sure. What in the hell is this line in this movie from the Warden? What the fuck is this?
It's kind of reminds me of, like, Horrible Bosses, where they're like, I'll bend her over a barrel and show her the 50 states.
Oh yeah.
And somebody's like, that's not a thing. He's like, no, sure it is. Like, I don't. They're just like that back and forth. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that. It's just like a thing that she wanted to say, and people were like, that's not a real thing that people say, and she was like, it is now.
She's like, I'm making it a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that in the movie, and I was like, now that's interesting. Okay, definitely haven't heard that one before. I think that what's her name, Joan Allen.
See who shits on the sidewalk?
Yes, shits
half
on
the population of San Francisco.
Ben, you're gonna get us canceled.
San Francisco or whatever.
That's not very woke of you. I think I think you
I am
yourself.
wide awake. Thank you very much. I've had Monster recently.
Yeah, but you're not culturally woke, Ben. You need a cultural Monster.
Oh.
You need an ethical energy drink.
Oh,
we
boy.
could sell that. We could make a bunch of money.
Are you falling asleep during your meetings? Do you need to get woke? SJW monster.
SJW monsters. There we go. So I also you mentioned it earlier, but I wanted to hit it again because I just saw it in my notes. This notion that the movie wants us to believe that Jason Statham getting his wife getting killed and him getting framed is all to get him in this jail for this warden. But I think you mentioned earlier, it could have happened faster. It took 6 months.
Yeah,
that's the primary reason where I was like, are we supposed to believe that this was all the long game? Because 6 months is the long game.
Well, it's not clear how often the death races happen.
Sure,
but they do mention that enough time has passed. So like that was. Oh, I guess that was part of it. Is Frankenstein was clearly injured from that race, so he had to have had enough time to heal.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's like that big of a plot hole, but we also don't know like how far apart the death races are, so we don't even know how many were missed. But we do know enough were missed that they say viewership is down. But since each death race has 3 days to it, like one death race is enough to know that viewership is down to some degree.
That's true. I think the best evidence we have is that there's a death race per $300 paycheck. So what did we say that was 3 weeks?
Every 3 weeks.
So you can always pay for your death race. It's a very circular economy. Work, pay death race. Death race pays you or something. Because I'd imagine with all these things going out of business. Well, I'm imagining if all these things go out of business, they might need to start like hiring people for it or something.
Well, that's a good point. I guess eventually you're either in the prison or you work for the prison.
Yeah, maybe it's that either you get your money and buy Death Race and keep that cycle going, and if you can't pay for Death Race, you go to jail. And then you have to be in the Death Race.
And then you're in Death Race.
Yeah, exactly.
and then you hope you get a chance to be in the Death Race, because there's only like 8 competitors or something, right?
Yeah. They should be like running Death Races 24/7 with how many prisoners they have, apparently.
Yeah.
Isn't there something early on in the movie that mentions like people are getting tired? Isn't it the opening text is like people are getting tired of the prison games that are currently on, so Death Race is like this new thing, or that like birth Death Race? Yeah,
it basically says not that there was like a significant amount of prison games, just that they were doing like fights to the death.
Yeah.
And the audience, much like the mobs in Rome wanted more, something like that. They specifically talk about like Colosseums and stuff.
It's so poetic. It's so literary. Paul W.S. Anderson is a genius.
Saul W.S. Panderson?
I'm on your side, Ben. I want to join the fan club. It's any other scenes you wanted to highlight? Because I feel like there's just a lot of stuff I was just like, my brain was very much, like I said, glazed over for with all this action.
Well, and a lot of the things that we highlight in movies tend to be like good bits of dialogue, and there's not really any of that in this movie.
Other than this, we'll see who shits on the sidewalk. I think that might be the only one I have written down.
Sure. There is like the scene where his napalm doesn't work again.
Oh yeah.
And he uses the ejector seat. He's just like, "Get on my lap, pretty lady," and she's "What?" And then he uses the ejector seat to launch the napalm, and it hits a thing and falls on people behind him. And again, that might have been part of why I expected the thing with the guns. I don't know if this happens before or after that, where it's like he hits something, in this case directly above him, but to affect something behind him, and then he throws out the cigarette lighter and luckily successfully lights the napalm on fire. So I mean that was kind of interesting from like the action scene standpoint. And then, what do you have any idea? Do you remember why at one point she like pokes her head out the top of the car?
No, I don't remember. It's probably just because they need to. I don't know. They're like, look who's coming, or something generic, right?
I feel like there was a specific reason, but I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
And then
there is a moment with her near the end where she says, "I wanted to know if you picked up on this, Ben." She asked Jason Statham what his real name is. I think when he said I don't even know his character's name in this movie. Jensen Ames.
Yeah.
And so like there's a moment where she asks him what his real name is, and I totally wanted him to go Arthur, and she goes, "You don't look like an Arthur." I wanted that scene from the mechanic again in this movie.
Nice. The last thing I want to mention, I like the idea of dropping the tombstone.
That is pretty neat. Yeah.
Yeah, and they do that, right out, like Frankenstein does it in the first thing that we see. So it's not like it's saved for a big situation. Oh, and I guess we should probably also mention the way the Death Diesel dies.
Okay.
That was a weird sentence. They so we mentioned briefly that they have like the death head things that you go over, and there's some amount of inclination or indication that enough weight has to pass over these plates or something.
Yeah.
So Tyrese Gibbons and Jason Statham, they pass in front of the Death Diesel and like at the same time go over one of the death heads.
Yep.
And it pops up the spike wall in front of the Death Diesel, which fucks it up real good. So that's fun. Like that's a fun use of like a teamwork situation where you wouldn't expect teamwork.
And there is some impressive destruction in the racing scenes, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
That moment with the Death Diesel in particular is a pretty great one.
Oh, I guess I also want to mention like the scene where like Tyrese Gibson just like Gibbons throws out his navigator.
Yes.
He's like, man, get out of my truck.
I did want to talk about the minor subplot of him, Tyrese, and dealing with his navigators. Yeah, throwing him
that's
into
one
a
angry
wall.
homo.
I really, really enjoyed that thing when he right before he pushes that navigator out. I love that moment because he's like, oh, there's a sword power up coming up. Get the box with the question mark on it, Tyrese, to get a blue shell. Like that's the dialogue in this movie. And then Tyrese drives over it, and Tyrese drives over it, doesn't get it because somebody else already got it. And the navigator's like, well, I thought it was lit up. And Tyrese is just like, what do you mean you thought? Get the fuck out of my car. It's a very good moment.
Yeah, so I definitely enjoyed some of that. I also, I guess, enjoyed the idea, like they created that situation by saying like Tyrese has male navigators because the audience like got squeamish. And then of course there's that one guy who's like he has male navigators because he's gay.
Yep.
And then like we later get that line like Tyrese is angry about something. He's like, that's one angry homo. And like I thought that shit was pretty funny. Like as far as bad taste gay jokes go, like that one's pretty funny, and it's not that homophobic. It's obviously not homophobic at all. But
I was about to say it's not very woke of you, Ben.
but he's not like shitting on him for being gay. He just like mentions that he's gay when he calls him angry, which I thought was pretty woke for the time of this movie.
I don't think you get to say what was woke or was not woke.
I think at this time we're still getting movies where they like use the word as a slur.
I think that it's in history and we can deny history all we want, Ben.
Oh, okay. I forgot about that. I forgot about the part where we just get to decide what happened.
Yes, so I think this movie is just not woke. Now, back in 2008, we have no idea. We can deny it.
It actually didn't even exist, right?
It didn't. You saw it in theaters? That's a lie. We're gonna have to recondition you.
False, fake, Photoshop.
Fake news from Ben. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to mention. Maybe the question: why is Tyrese cutting his face with a razor blade while reading scripture? Do we know?
We don't know anything other than he commemorates every kill that way.
Okay, I think I totally missed that.
they do say like they do say that he every time he gets a kill on the track, he adds to his facial scar.
Okay.
And the scripture, I'm sure, is like just adding some depth to that nonsense. Just like giving it a reason that we don't fully explain.
Sure. Trying to make it mysterious or something.
Well, I mean, mysterious, but like, I don't know. People think that religion is weird anyway, so might as well attach this weird behavior to religion.
Yeah, okay.
That kind of thing.
Right on. Yeah, I guess it's this death race thing, I just wanted a little more of the audience thing, like I said. The car stuff is action and just it's decent. You're
tainted, man. If you had come into this movie fresh, you might have a better opinion. A different opinion.
I think that'd be tough. This still seems like not a movie right up my alley, which is why you're the Paul W.S. Anderson defender. But while we're on the topic of like the non-action scenes, I'm not the biggest fan of lists as a character, like giving this stuttering like giving a guy a stutter and stuff like that, and then just making him this character who's like, I know information and I tell the audience the information.
I don't know. I feel like people have problems with that kind of storytelling, but I also think that sometimes you have to deliver information and you can't do like crazy setups to explain every little thing.
Just make it all text on the screen. Every 5 minutes there's just a block of text we have to read, you know? Make it a silent film where it's just cars and action and then it cuts to just a paragraph we have to read.
It's like I don't know. I think that every once in a while you just have to exposit some things.
Sure. I would have been fun. I understand that, and I think I do have an issue with the lisp and the stutter. Not really a lisp, more of a stutter that lists has.
Have you seen, are you familiar with that actor?
Yeah, he's been in a bunch of stuff. I think his name's like Fred Kohler. Yeah, Fred Kohler. I've seen him in a bunch of stuff. He's one of that guys. Yeah. He's
one of the that guys, but he is one of that guys that almost always plays a whiny, pathetic, stuttering character.
Okay, so they were just tapping into his
wheelhouse,
his typecast,
I guess.
His wheelhouse,
like
yeah.
in Grimm, he plays a person. I don't know if you know the premise of Grimm, like the
one with
fairy tale
Billy and Mandy. Oh no, okay, not that one. Okay,
no, the fairy tale creatures exist and only Grimms can see them. Only Grimms and other fairy tale creatures can see them.
Okay,
the rest of the time they just look like normal people. But they'll have like moments where they like spaz out, and then the Grimm characters can see them during those times. He plays a part rat character in that show.
Okay.
In Criminal Minds, he plays a character who's like either his mom or his grandpa or somebody in his life ruins his life, and eventually he snaps and kills him, and then he sees everybody as them and kills them, or tries to kill them.
Okay.
But he's like this very pathetic character where it's like he's been his whole life he's been controlled by this one person, and then when he finally snaps, he does a bunch of murders, but he's still like really awkward and pathetic. So that's just like that is a character that he plays very regularly.
Okay.
So when I saw him as that character, I'm just like, yeah, that makes sense.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah. That's just where he was at that time. That's an interesting career to play that type of role a lot. You know?
The snivelly, whiny character. I'm not sure. I've always wondered about that, and like people who play like ugly characters, like fat characters regularly, it's like, do you feel bad about that characteristic, or are you happy that it's making you money? Like I just have never known how to feel for those people.
Yeah.
Like, are fat people being exploited for the sake of having a fat person in a movie? Like a lot of the famous fat people have lost a bunch of weight later in their life, so like maybe they didn't like it that much. I don't know.
The only opinion on that isn't radical and extremist is the one to say, it is making fun of them, and if you think any differently, you have to die. So, nice. Check yourself, Ben. I did find that in the three straight-to-video sequels to this movie, all have lists in them. List is the only character with the same actor that shows up for all 4 of these modern Death Race movies.
Is he always just called Lists? Like, yes. I assume that's a nickname.
That nickname sticks in whatever the hell the rest other movies are about, which I did not look into. But there's Death Race, this one. There's Death Race 2. Then there's Death Race 3, Inferno, and Death Race Beyond Anarchy. Those are the 4 modern Death Race movies. Where from the original, there's Death Race 2000 and Death Race 2050.
That's weird.
Do you like it? Do you want to cover them all? Do you want to watch them all?
I remember when Death Race 2 came out, and I was like, this is like a movie I'm never going to watch.
Okay. Statham is in none of the other ones. It's Luke Goss.
That's correct. Yeah.
Luke Goss is Statham. Like, discount Statham is what he looks like. They get him in it.
Is he in all of the other ones?
I think so.
Does it like make sense that they follow the same character?
Maybe. Like I said, I didn't do a lot. He might not be in Death Race Beyond Anarchy. I think that might be its own standalone thing.
Death Race Inferno.
I think he's in 2 and Inferno.
Inferno.
They have to race around a volcano like in old like Hot Wheels cartoons. Isn't it the Hot Wheels movie they race around a volcano or some shit like that?
Probably.
Yeah.
That sounds very Hot Wheels.
Right. The other character I wanted to mention, because he has his scenes are all like out of the races and stuff, but Ian McShane, the great Ian McShane, as Coach in this movie. Yeah. I feel like this is another Paul W.S. Anderson, like, just having to check the boxes of filmmaking. Like, yes, this is an action movie, but, you gotta have that kind of heartfelt moment for our main character just to check the box that it exists in this movie. And, this version, Death Race version of it, is Ian McShane being like, I was up for parole 3 years ago, but I choose to stay here because I love the death race and I don't know how to assimilate to non-prison life. And I'm like, this is him trying to have his Shawshank Redemption moment, Because that's a big motif of that movie is the what the librarian leaves prison and he can't handle it and he kills himself.
Okay.
I was like, but that's the only time it really comes up, is Ian McShane as Coach being like, I'm in it for the love of the game,
He says it the one time, yeah.
Yeah, and it seemed to me as very much just checking the box of like, okay, here's our heartfelt character moment for Statham and his mentor, and they just needed to do it, because that's like a common, idea in these movies.
Okay. I mean, it's reminiscent of like Whistler from Blade.
Sure, yeah, the elder statesman type of thing,
Yeah, but... I don't know, the thing about him choosing to stay in prison, I definitely thought was a little goofy.
Yes,
because I don't think you just get to choose that you live in prison.
Right.
I think the only way to do that is to just keep committing more crimes
when you're not in prison, to get back in prison, right?
No, I mean, you can commit crimes while you're in prison.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. I don't know if I've told you about this. I'm sure I've told you about it, but it must have been like years ago if I did. The show Acceptable TV on VH1, one of the earlier things Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland did, which is probably canceled now for Justin Roiland. Look at that. But it was this show where every episode, it was like a 30-minute block on VH1, and every episode would be these 5 shorts, like 5 just 2.5-minute like segments, and basically would be of a TV show. They would be like a parody of a TV show, and the structure of the show was like at the end of it every week, like I think the show was on Fridays or something, like people could vote, and the shows in that episode with like the 2 most votes would get like a continuation, the other 3s would get like scrapped.
Oh, you've mentioned this.
Yeah.
Is this where Pootie Tang came from or something?
Not Pootie Tang. This is like where Mr. Sprinkles came from, which is like an early version of Rick and Morty. Okay. And there's like so many sketches on this that I've brought up, but the one I want to bring up is there was a parody of the show Prison Break, but it was called, are you ready for this, Ben? Prison Break. And the idea was that this guy goes to jail, and so his brother has to go to jail too to get in to break him out, like the same premise as Prison Break. But while the brother is in the process of getting into prison, the brother commits another crime while in prison, and in this universe, when you commit crimes in prison, you go to prison, which is a prison in like a smaller prison inside the prison. So then the show is Prison Break, where the brother then has to get into prison to break his brother back into regular prison, so they can resume the plan to get back into society. And that's when you said committing crimes in prison, to stay in prison. That's what it made me think of.
Nice.
I will have to see if I can find that clip. I'm hoping it's on YouTube, but that I always like the way it's said is like prison break, so they can get back. Like it's pointed that the show is about getting back to prison.
Well, an initial search of Prison Break, Acceptable TV.
Yeah, right on. Okay, nice.
Each year, 1 million Americans commit crimes and are sentenced to prison. But the crime doesn't stop there. Prisoners who commit crimes in prison are tried by a special prison court.
You're guilty of crimes in prison!
If found guilty, they are sentenced to prison, a special prison within prison.
Meet your new cellmate, your brother.
Kevin, what are you doing here? I'm taking you back to prison.
This man, Kevin Thompson, was sent to prison.
Guilty! I sentence you to prison!
Convinced of his brother's innocence, Billy Thompson committed a crime and got caught on purpose.
You will go to prison also!
So that he could go to prison to help Kevin escape prison. In prison, Billy was caught planning his and his brother's escape from regular prison and was
Guilty.
sent
I sentence you
to prison. So Kevin, the brother who was sentenced to prison in the first place, purposefully committed a crime in prison to get into prison. In hopes that the two of them might one day escape prison, back into the surrounding prison, where they can resume planning their escape from regular prison. The explanation of Prison Break will continue after this. Escaping prison into regular prison will not be easy for the Thompson brothers, nor for any other prisoner. For prison is guarded by actual prisoners who take this job seriously.
You next!
Because the prison guards know that if they were ever to allow a prisoner to escape back into prison, they would be punished severely by the prison warden, the sole arbiter of law in prison, who is himself also a prisoner, and who would have few misgivings about sending the failed prison guards into prison. But this story is not about prison. Or prison, for that matter. This is the story of one man and that man's brother who dared to plan a daring escape from prison back into prison.
It's simple. All we have to do is get past that guard.
Boy, Kev, you really are new at prison, aren't you? Those aren't just guards. Those are prisoners. Thinking like a prisoner won't help us.
Well then, we'll just have to start thinking like a guard.
Acceptable TV was a fantastic show. It's too bad it's canceled now.
What did Justin Roiland do? Like, didn't he beat his housekeeper or something?
Yeah, we talked about it in some Adventure Time episode. I think he committed. He got sentenced for starting a death race. He committed a death race. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Late stage capitalism. Justin Roiland is a death racer.
He, I think he did a domestic.
Did a domestic? Yeah, he got mad at the woman for putting the dishes away so they fall over.
She didn't dry the can opener, Rob. It's gonna rust.
It's gonna rust. I think the last thing I wanted to mention as I'm looking through my notes is that I don't like the score of this movie. It's very much like generic teen edgelord rock to me. Like there's just some killer guitar riffs, bro, you know, from like a stoner in his room in high school or something. It didn't do anything for me.
I can't disagree. Well, and for one, you know that oddly enough, the score I never really paid that much attention to. Despite the fact that I really enjoy music, and we've talked about just music before.
Yeah.
But I don't recall the score hardly at all. So
yeah, I mean, Ben, you sit down and watch a movie, and you're like, there's two things. Does it have a story? That's all I'm going to pay attention to. Is it Paul W.S. Anderson related? He's my favorite filmmaker.
That's right. How did you know?
I don't know when we'd ever do another Paul W.S. Anderson movie. I mean, Event Horizon might be the closest one because it's standalone and interesting. But like, I don't ever want to talk about the Resident Evil movies.
No,
not Mortal Kombat either.
No,
he did Alien versus Predator. I remember that one. That's him.
This will only hurt for a minute.
We did the Pompeii movie. We could watch him direct a movie about a volcano exploding.
Oh my god. I don't remember if it's Alien vs. Predator, or was there a sequel to that movie?
Yeah, I think there was Alien vs. Predator Requiem. That was
okay. I think it was
closer
Requiem
to the time this came out in 2008, because Alien vs. Predator was 2004.
Yeah, I think it was Requiem. There's a scene like in a high school, and like the Predator is putting some kind of blue thing into an alien's mouth, and it like melts it down or whatever.
Okay.
And I was just like reminded of this stupid song that me and my friends were singing around that time. And so me and one of my other friends, like in the theater, like looked at each other and started singing it. And it was, the lyrics are, "This will only hurt for a minute. I'll only stick the head of it in. Okay. I promise I'll never try to come in your mouth." It's like a prison rape song or something.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
It's like, I don't know where it came from, but one of my friends came across it and we all started singing it. And yeah, so that's what I remember about that movie.
That's interesting.
There you go. That's who I was as a kid.
Nice. I guess then, as we get near the end of this, before we get to our questions and stuff, if there's nothing else you wanted to highlight, did we find out which one of us shits on the sidewalk? Do you want to take that title? I don't know if this is something we should be vying for.
To be honest, I still think it's just somebody in San Francisco.
Okay. I also, now that I'm realizing, I also don't know how she means it. Like, she says, we'll see who shits on the sidewalk. I think she's saying that because she's about to bust out a bomb or something to kill him? Or whatever happens near the end of the movie. There's some bomb antics or something like that.
Yeah.
They knock it around like hot potato, and Jason Statham makes a goofy face. It's crazy. But does she, in that moment, does she want to be the one who shits on the sidewalk? Is that a good thing, or does she want Statham to shit on the sidewalk? Like, is it a bad thing? Does it depend in what relation they are to San Francisco and who we ask?
Well, I can tell you this much. I have no idea. That's all. There's some amount of shitting on sidewalks.
And we're going to see who does it. Okay. We'll have to keep that in our back pocket. That's a good phrase.
Is this at all related to drop ball? Is the real question.
Exactly.
Is shitting on the sidewalk code for dropping the ball?
Dropping the ball, maybe. That's interesting. We have a lot of things connected right here, Ben.
Yeah.
Well, if there's nothing else you wanted to highlight about, I guess I did want to ask you. I think you said you said it with Death Race 2, but have you seen the further Inferno or Beyond Anarchy?
No.
Okay. That'll be. We said we were doing remakes and stuff. Let's skip that. Let's just finish out the Death Race franchise.
Yeah, sure.
Let's just watch these horrible movies that don't even have Jason Statham in it.
Sounds great.
I think it comes as no surprise for our questions. Cinemoddities and Late Night. I'm going no to both for this. I don't think this is odd. I think this is a Paul W.S. Anderson movie. He's made a type. Even if he doesn't make them, this type of movie is nothing new. This is an action movie for sure. Right in Jason Statham's alley for this time in his career, as we've talked about. And it's not doing it for me that I want to see this again or show it to somebody as a late night movie. There's nothing real interesting going on here. It's just mindless action. It needs those audience cutaways to give it another dimension that would make it interesting. But I'm going no to both. What do you think for Statham's Death Race? How many? I don't know. What do you use for ranking Paul W.S. Anderson movies on your fan club website? I give this 4 popcorn buckets out of 5. I don't know. What do you use to rate things in your fan club, man?
It's you keep mispronouncing his name. It's Saul W.S. Panderson. He's pandering. So let's see. Cinemoddity, no, definitely not. Late night, there's probably other things I'm gonna pick. Like, I don't know, if somebody's open to watch a Jason Statham movie, I'm probably gonna show them Snatch.
Okay, that's a
if
good
they've already
point.
seen Snatch and Lock, Stock and
Revolver.
I don't know that I would show people Revolver.
They have to see. It's required reading.
Yeah, if they've already seen all those movies and they've also seen The Mechanic and Crank, and I was like, have you seen Death Race? And they were like, no. I'd be like, all right, well, if you like Mechanic and Crank, we should watch Death Race.
Okay, that's fair. I like that. There's a lot of lists to move through before you can come to this one.
Oh yeah. It's not only know your audience, it's know what your audience has watched.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. Maybe Bullets is a good ranking system for your fan club because Paul W.S. Anderson has a lot of action and a lot of shooting. Not really in Mortal Kombat or Event Horizon. Well, you'll think of something. You'll find a good one because you know Paul. Maybe there's something in Paul W.S. Anderson's life that you know all about that you can use for ranking on your fan club website.
I don't think I'm allowed to talk about it, but
okay, because I'm not in the fan club. Is that what you're saying? You can
no,
talk about it
I have there's an NDA about it. I'm not allowed to disclose Saul W.S. Panderson's stuff.
Okay, stuff. Yes, the legal term for it is stuff.
That's right.
So then, getting to the restaurant, I think this is for snacks and stuff. For the restaurant, particularly, this is one I think we both have in the back of our heads that we're going to have to flesh out. We're going to need some type of death race in the restaurant, like an actual event. Of course, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
My thought was, the thing I landed on, of course, like I said, we have to bat this around and come up with the best version of it. I think that it should be a death race that people can, like customers and maybe workers, if they want to, they can basically pay to participate in. So it's kind of like, a pay-to-play situation. Maybe we'd keep it, limited at 8 contestants, 8 racers or something like that. But I want to do it on one of those, like, you ever been to like a Dick's Sporting Goods or like a shoe store, and they'll have that like mini racetrack, like the oval mini racetrack, like in the store? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I've never seen that.
Okay, I've seen it like Dick's Sporting Goods when I was younger, like in a mall and stuff.
Are you talking about like for shoes?
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly, for shoes.
I've seen it where they have like part of one, but I've never seen a whole one.
Okay, I've seen one that's like a full little oval type of thing.
Okay,
and I figured we should have that for our contestants to do the death race on. Like it'd be a death race on a very small track. Well, so I was thinking it wouldn't be a foot race. We'd give them like, I don't know, like little like clown
Scooters?
bikes or something. Like I'm thinking where like for a full grown person it looks real goofy, like the tiny pedals and everything, and your knees are up to your chin.
Okay.
But those with like machine guns and stuff on.
Nice.
Like it would still be a true death race, of course. I don't want to lose that factor of it.
Oh, so you're not trying to do the other types of death races that we mentioned, where you like race to death?
No, I want it to be they're going to shoot at each
death.
other and kill each other. Okay. Yeah. Maybe.
What about?
Maybe,
are they going to shoot passerbys and shit, like just observers?
Hopefully. I mean, there can be collateral damage, you know.
Do they get extra points for that?
Absolutely. Well, I'd have to go back into the spreadsheet to dig up what we said for the Death Race 2000, but now I'm thinking we might be able to just add on to what we had there from the Death Race and the points of the people in the restaurant. I also like, Ben, we should add to our repertoire of things saying, like you were mentioning, another type of a death race is like the race to death type of thing. Mm. It could be one of our mottos, you know. It's like, life is the true death race.
Well, I was just thinking, like, you know, maybe it's like you sign up for a death race, but you don't know which one you're getting.
Oh, okay. Like a potpourri of death races?
Yeah. So I feel like for the one where you're like racing to death, we usually put people in a room with a bunch of drugs.
And sun lamps.
Yeah, and sun lamps, definitely. It's like, see who does like the most heroin. But like the rule is you're not allowed to overdose. You're just like you have to die of like quote unquote natural causes.
It's a race to death, but you can't commit suicide.
That's right.
Can you do suicide by cop? Would that count in our death race? Has this gotten too dark?
Do we have cops in the restaurant?
Only if they're...
Like, we probably have police officers, but do we have any that are like employed as police for the restaurant?
I don't think so. They'd have to be like off duty, coming just eating at the restaurant type of thing.
That's what I expect. That we definitely have some of those.
So we keep that in mind. If they're an off-duty cop, we tell everybody about them. If they want to commit suicide by cop, they can go bother that cop and hope he shoots them.
Definitely.
Is that what you're saying for the restaurant? We should also have these other races, other death races. Okay, I like that. Race to death.
I definitely think it should be random. Like you sign up for the race, you don't know what you're getting.
Okay. Is the Grim Reaper going to be somewhere in the restaurant that people can like race toward the Grim Reaper? Like the physical Grim Reaper?
Isn't he already?
I know, but I guess we'd have to know where he is to race to him. Or is it an endless race where the contestants just be like,
they just have to go find him.
Death, you know?
They have to go find him. They don't know where he is.
Right on. The only other thing I had for the restaurant other than the death race.
There's no quitting.
Of course. Yeah, no quitting. Not at all. I guess wouldn't we then have to rule out suicide by cop as well? Isn't that kind of quitting?
I don't know. I think suicide by cop is probably not allowed.
Yeah. Okay, I'm with you. So
if it has suicide in the name is
so what's the speed run strat for this race? Do drugs, stand in front of a sun lamp. Is that it? Can we add anything else?
I don't know. I think lots of heroin, or if you can find like a diseased rat or something.
Unprotected sex?
Oh yeah, you can probably. I don't think any of those are particularly fast deaths. I think that your best bet is to find like a bubonic plague rat.
Okay, I'm also now laughing at the fact that you said find a diseased rat, and my immediate response was unprotected sex.
With the diseased rat?
Yeah,
yes.
I mean it's a new addition.
I'm upset I missed that.
It's a new addition to the restaurant. There's new strats. You got to uncover the best way to do it. So right. People are going to try anything.
Yeah, that's true. I don't want to give away too much. I want people to figure it out. I don't want to shape the meta, I should say.
Exactly. You want it to be in 30 years there's still Easter eggs for people to find.
That's right. That's how much I care about my customers.
Exactly. We want them to have a good, clean, fun race to death.
That's right.
The filmy food thing I had comes from early on in the movie. But I would very much like to have an item on the menu called prison oatmeal. And it's just oatmeal that we get, like, maybe the prison, the nearest to the Cinemoddities restaurant, like, doesn't have, or didn't use up all their oatmeal, so we get their old oatmeal to serve as prison oatmeal.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds good. It looks like that actually might kill you. So that actually might be the winning strat.
Oh, that's okay.
Just get that oatmeal. That sounds pretty good. The thing that I was thinking of, it's like I'm reminded of do you remember like a freezer pizza brand called Tombstone? Like, is that I don't know if it's still a thing.
Absolutely. I haven't seen it in a while. They used to sell it at the Walgreens near my apartment, and I used to get it because it would be cheap and easy, but then they stopped selling it. But yeah, Tombstone for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if it's still a thing. So I think we should have on the menu like a freezer pizza that you can order, but what you get is actually a steel plate.
Okay, I like incredibly heavy, dense steel plate. Okay,
right, 6 inches thick, and we don't describe it as a Tombstone pizza, but it's just a freezer pizza. Like it just it's called that.
Okay,
but then what you get is actually.
I like that. I would like to serve this hunk of steel with bullet holes in it. And when people ask, when the customer asks what it is, be like, it's a pizza, and that's the pepperoni, and you point at the bullet holes.
Well, and we, to come to think of it, we can even source the tombstones naturally from the death races that we're having.
Absolutely. Are you saying tombstones in the sense of the things that'll be on their car, or the tombstones that they're buried under?
Both.
Okay. Because that's like, if people are of course dying in this death race by definition. Do we then make
if
a tombstone?
We're doing our jobs right?
Yeah. Do we then make a tombstone, like get a tombstone engraved for them, just to sell it as a frozen pizza later?
I mean, do you know how expensive that would be?
Very expensive.
So yeah, we should do it.
What's that? I think it's Curb Your Enthusiasm, where they like Larry's father has to get a tombstone engraved, and he like does it with like contractions in words and misspellings, and he's like, because they charged me by the letter or something like that,
That sounds right.
Right on. What do you have any other snacks? Because Ben came in here hot before we started recording. Ben was like, Rob, I have all the snacks. We're doing 50 minutes of snacks in this episode.
That is what I said.
So what? And you're like, and they're all about Paul W.S. Anderson, who I didn't know about until after this moment Rob is mentioning now in the chronology of things. But what do you got for your 50 minutes of snacks?
Yeah, so what actually happened is I told Rob that I had a snack, which is more than I normally have, because I just tend to make up my snacks on the spot.
And I actually misheard him, because I thought he was talking about snacks for this episode, and he was really saying he just had snacks in his hand at the moment.
Right, I did, and they were good. And I think we've been recording for longer.
I thought you were just going to cut there. You're going to be like, Rob was correct. I have nothing else for the restaurant. The snack I ate was tasty. And then just silence.
Well, no, I thought, I was going to say, like, I think we've been recording for longer than 50 minutes. So I definitely had more than 50 minutes of snacks.
Right on.
But they are gone now.
Okay. Well, then, at the end of this, I think, Ben, we should say, of the things that we have to wrap up at the end of this, we are guests technically not forever, but for a good bit of time. We are saying goodbye to Jason Statham. We've done all our Stathams we wanted to cover. We even got it. He bled over into this series. We're going to do some remakes and reimaginings, so stay tuned to see what those are going to be. I think those are fun. People can figure out what has been remade from things we've covered. But yeah, speaking of Operation Fortune, yes, that's right. They are the same movie. We did say that. We established that. We deduced that. I say. But if you do want to hear us talk about Operation Fortune when it comes out, and definitely want to hear us talk more Jason Statham, Guy Ritchie, and a whole bunch more stuff, head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/Cinemoddities, where Ben and I rant about all these other things, and I guess Ben is going to make a hard case to do all the other Paul W.S. Anderson movies for his fan club on the Patreon, and so we'll see who he gets to do that with him, because I don't want to watch the Resident Evil movies. But anything you want to say about the Patreon, Ben?
As much as Rob has stuck to this Paul W.S. Anderson joke, Rob is a very committed man, and that shows in the Patreon. he will take a joke and just stick with it. And I think that you guys need to come see that for yourself. It's totally worth a watch.
Right on. I dig it. Other than that, if I guess so before I get to this final thing I have to say, we should mention, I'll switch it around a little bit this time. How are we going to end this episode? What are we going to play in reverse? I don't really. I was just like, the music that happens during the ending credits. Maybe that's something. Was there any music that stuck out to you that you wanted to play in reverse, or is there do you know a song called "Death Race" by somebody?
No.
Okay, no. Shania Twain doesn't have a Death Race song or anything like that.
I mean, I don't know. She might. I didn't say that there aren't songs. I just said I don't know what they are.
Okay, how about this? If there is a song called "Death Race" by Shania Twain, I'll play that in reverse. If not, I will just play the ending credits music from this movie in reverse. So, listener, get ready. You'll find out in a bit. But I want to end this by saying now, once again, I don't think, as we mentioned earlier, Ben, we have definitively determined who shits on the sidewalk or what that means. So I would like to end with a call to action to our cinema audience. Email us, cinemoddities@gmail.com. Explain to us who shits on the sidewalk. We need to know. And somebody out there has to know. We can use our platform to crowdsource answers to the questions that we really need. We need them for.
Yeah, I'm with you. We do need to know who shits on the sidewalk.
Yes, exactly. And so with that, Ben, bye, Jason Statham. Bye, Jason Statham. We will always remember that our schools are Call of Duty, Jason Statham, as you've told us many times.